flow think about things. It doesn't really come across as very well articulated. So I thought this would be a good opportunity just with the new year and stuff, as I'm reevaluating my content, to really kind of think about why I won't be doing Genesis anymore. I'm going to go over a couple of things in this video. So I will be talking about the positives. Definitely much to love about Genesis for sure. The point system, the communication that's been happening, some of my thoughts on rogue decks. And
all right, Farfa, white man, you've talked enough. It's time to hit you with the speed up option. 1.75x Farfa, go!
And how they have sort of found a place in Genesis to some extent, the lack of pendulums and links. And of course, I'm going to be going over some of the negatives and why ultimately I've decided to not pursue Genesis any longer. And that will just sort of come down to, from a content creator's perspective, where those numbers really lie in terms of audience enjoyment. My issues with Genesis still being a modern format, talking a little bit about the power level, the points list as well, and some other factors that have led me to kind of drop Genesis altogether. So to be very clear and disclaim this is not some sort of objective analysis. I'm doing this pretty much off script. I have a couple of bullet points here and that's it. But I have had enough time to really think about this and sort of really pinpoint where my main issues and gripes with the format are. And again, to reiterate, this is completely opinion-based. This is just my personal perspective. If you love Genesis format, if you think it's the future, if you think it's the greatest thing that's ever blessed this game, I'm absolutely behind you. I really hope that to be the case. I'm just saying, for me personally, my personal opinion and perspective, I don't think it's for me anymore.
All I'm gonna say is that my opinion is the only one that is objective.
Let's go over the point system. I think this is the single best thing about Genesis format. The way that all of the cards work together in a numerical sort of totality is just fantastic. It's, in a nutshell, basically Duel Links, if you think about it. And Duel Links, I think one of the best things about it has actually, in my opinion, been over the years, the idea that you can only play X amount of cards based off of this number, right? If a card is limited to 2, you might want to play, throwing random cards out here, this is probably not their actual numbers, like Enemy Controller, insane card, but it's limited to 2, but also Tour Guide is limited to 2, which means you can play double Econ or 0 Tour Guide and mix and match accordingly. I made those numbers up completely. I don't actually know if that's really, it's just an example. But I really love that about Genesis because it gives you this limited number that you have to sort of think about and consider in your deck building. And to me personally, I mean, you've probably seen from a lot of my content, the cube building, storage wars, all these type of different series that I run on my channel, they're all primarily deck building based, and that is the most fun aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion.
I think that the point system, I can't imagine that he's not gonna talk about this, but the point system in general, I think is extremely cool. However, things are weighted so willy-nilly that I can't take it seriously sometimes. Like, Valor being 7 points, but Imperm being 13. Or, what's it called? Or like Barone being 80, or like Rongo Miniad being like some weird amount of points. It's very, like, it is such a weird format. It's such like a weird, what's it called? It's just so weird. I understand why some things are pointed the way that they are, but it seems like they're just always either way too heavy on it, or just like so in between. And I think like probably the best example is like Rescue Ace Impulse being 5 points, because now it's just like, why would I play? Because some cards being pointed in any capacity takes them from like extremely good to just like, why would I play this ever? Like, it eats up points. It's just, it's very weird. It's very frustrating. Like, points add up so fast in Genesis that like even wasting like 10 points can feel like sometimes you just don't have the space. Like, when I'm building, like, Labyrinth, I'm like, ah, shit, like, I have to spend, like, 80 points, so, like, 3 big welcome, 1 small welcome. Like, am I playing, like, triple trap trick? Am I playing, like, triple trap trick, triple Daruma? Plus, like, another, like, 2 points randomly? Am I playing, like, Lady to just get to a solid 100? Like, I don't know what I'm filling out.
I love deck building. I love thinking about the combos. I love thinking about my consistency in my deck, doing the numbers and the math behind opening certain pieces, etc. It's the best part of the game, in my opinion. I cannot praise enough how well put together it is. I know it's talking about like a vibes-based ban list and stuff like that. It's obviously not vibes-based, okay? That was, shout outs to Seema, that was obviously just like maybe just like an off-the-cuff statement. But they have curated it to be a specific way, and they want you to play certain cards or not play certain cards with other cards. Like, when a card is at 51 and another is at 51, like, it's deliberate, it's intentional. You can't go over that 100 limit. So I really love that about Genesis, and I think it's a fantastic thing. The only disadvantage is like deck building is really hard for it officially, so I just use Dueling Book. I don't know if they have an actual tool for it, but it's kind of annoying to like get all the numbers together, and I just think digital support for this would make me like it a lot more if this was in Macedo as an example. The next thing I want to talk about is the communication. The Genesis communication is, my god, it is night and day. You guys probably know like the big puppet meme.
I don't even need to say anything.
It's like
it's
Japan
literally
Studio
like
Dice
perfect.
controlling Shueisha, controlling TV Tokyo, controlling Konami Japan, controlling Konami TCG, controlling Joshua Schmidt or something. None of this is privileged information. This is literally just how the functionality of a corporate business works. But there's so much bureaucracy and red tape involved. Clearly, obviously been in the works for like multiple months, maybe years at this point. So the fact that it's now finally here, you can see that, the NA TCG division has so much freedom with this specific project that they want to do things a certain way that clearly isn't being done for like the main game. And so because of this, they are able to like just speak so openly and so directly about certain cards and interactions and future updates, and it is just a breath of fresh air. It's the best communication I've ever seen from any card game community. I've read Magic articles. To be fair, I don't know what I'm reading, but I have read Magic articles from Wizards, and it just in terms of the clarity, directness, and honesty, it seems like for the most part in the Genesis articles, it's incredible. It's really good stuff, and I cannot praise that enough. Another positive about
I will say, some of the things that they do mention in Genesis articles is kind of, how do I describe it? In regards to like the communication, there are a lot of like very good things that they do answer, or a lot of good things that they do tell us. However, some very obvious caveats are sometimes just not answered, or kind of addressed, or kind of ignored. Like the easy example is like maybe the list before we got Droll to 25 was like, why are we not mentioning Droll and Lockbird at all? And like how that is a card that determines games. I mean, they did in a future article be like, oh, we are going to hit Droll or whatever, but they kind of did. Or it's like kind of like, why did we lower the point value of Nibiru? Or why did we do very specific decisions? Like why is Rongo Mini at just not 100 points? Why are some floodgates just objective? Why are some floodgates extremely highly pointed and some just aren't? And I know they can't answer like literally every question, but I think like generic enough questions like these, which constantly do get brought up in these spaces, should be addressed.
Genesis is the concept of playing these other decks. Now, what I mean by that is you'll probably be familiar with that big, hairy behemoth Peeps. He's a complete gorilla, both physically and in the brain as well. But, I mean, gorillas are pretty smart. But, you know, something he said a while ago really stuck with me. And it was this concept of the other rogue decks. And one example that he gave was like Six Samurai. And all this new Six Samurai support is really good. It's a good deck. It's strong. Look at Speedroid. Speedroid is another, it's a really good deck. It's decent. It's got a lot of cool tools. I mean, have you read Crystal Clearwing, Boss Monster, whatever it is? It's insane. But these are just not going to contend with the meta. They're just not good enough to contend with the meta. So where can you play these other decks? Genesis may be the answer for that. And I think that's really cool. I think it's awesome that there is a place for this, what is basically bulk and pack filler archetypes of new sets to have somewhere to be played. Cooltoon might be another example of this. From my understanding, I'm not a TCG player. My understanding is Cooltoon is garbage in the TCG. It's not good enough, but it's really doing well in Genesis. It got 3 out of the top 8 spots in my own last Genesis Open tournament. So if anything to go by Farfa viewers, you know, the most advanced, prolific, talented, skillful duelist in the universe, that would be a great representation of the metagame. So, you know, there's that. No pendulums and links, I think, is kind of maybe a good thing as well. I don't know if Genesis is supposed to be like the pathway for new players, but not having to deal with pendulums, ultimately you don't really have to deal with pendulums in Modern anyway, because who the fuck plays that shit? They killed that mechanic deliberately, let's be real. Links, obviously, it's not like complicated, but it definitely is complicated in the sense of how you sequence your combos, because link summoning is so much more open-ended than just, you know, very specific fusion summons or synchro plays. Like, you're way more likely to fall prey to option paralysis with link summoning decks and stuff, so maybe that was like one of the reasons why they got rid of it. While
I think that links, I think, okay, pendulums is just like, who fucking cares? Pendulum is actually just like fucking Hitler archetype. But I do think links should exist in some form. It's very weird, because you could very much tell that some archetypes are entirely built around link summoning. And that if some things are like not existent in Genesis, that's like fine. Like if Pen Mag doesn't exist, if Malice doesn't exist, if like whatever doesn't exist, that's fine. But it is very frustrating to play a deck like Magical Musketeer or Gem Knights or whatever, and you don't have access to a link monster, which your deck is very, very, very clearly based, very based around. Like, Gem Knights not having Phantom Quartz turned that deck from like a 1-card like Giga combo, like OTK, into like a 3-card like slop fest where you kind of just click some buttons. If you're playing whatever it's called, if you're playing like Magical Musketeer, like you unironically gotta go back to like Ties of the Brethren Control. There are there are a lot of like archetypal link monsters that I think maybe could be reworked so that they can exist in Genesis. Just give me some Gem Knight support. Give me a little bit more. But yeah, like the problem is just like the pool of variance and strength between like good links versus like broken links versus like terrible links, it's so wide. It's disgusting.
A lot of people perceive that link summoning was the big bad modern power creep enabler of Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think that's actually where the power creep lies, weirdly enough. But first and foremost, again, like now that we're into the negatives, I just want to be very clear. I think conceptually there's more positives than negatives for Genesis. Like ultimately the main reason for me is that the numbers just aren't there. Genesis tournaments that I've been running have been slowly depreciating from, you know, we had 250 for the first time, which is unreal for an online dueling book tournament, right? And then over time, like people just don't care anymore. It's just the reality. I could be completely washed, but looking at other content creators as well, it's kind of like maybe the same story. I think MVT's like Genesis 10-minute testing last month, I think was one of his worst viewed videos that month, other than Junior Journey. Junior Journey. So primarily, let's be clear, I'm not gonna like pretend or anything like I'm a content creator first and foremost. If the audience isn't there, I'm just not going to prioritize it. So that's number one. But I am at my heart and core, a competitive player. While I play the game somewhat casual competitively, I do like optimizing and doing things to the letter and properly and playing the game at a decent level that I can allot that time to. And so I think one of the biggest problems, if there's anything to take away from this, is that while I do like Genesis, I just feel like I'm playing watered down Modern. Which, to be fair, you could argue is exactly the point. It should.
That is fair. Unironically, like, Genesis being a weaker version of Modern decks is possibly is a good thing to an extent. Like, I do want to be able to play like a format of like relatively like high-paced Yu-Gi-Oh without having to like want to shit myself. Because like if my opponent like has 5 cards in hand and like I negate 5 cards and they show me the 6th card that's the 1-card OTK, then I want to kill myself. But like I will say, like, the problem with Genesis in regard to like being watered down advanced decks is that sometimes they fuck it up. Sometimes they do just like fuck up the balance, and it is like pretty fucking annoying. Because like the very easy example is like Radiant Typhoon on release, or like Vanquishal Canine on release. That shit was unethical. It was just way too good. It was just too strong. It was fucked up.
Be watered down modern. That's fine. That's great. But for me personally, if I'm going to play an alternative format in a different type of Yu-Gi-Oh, it needs to be different enough for me to engage with it. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm playing modern, just worse. Now, this is where subjectivity really comes in. Again,
Draco Tail is still like one of the best decks. Arguably, Draco Tail is the best deck. It's like the three best decks are like Killer 2, Draco Tail, and whatever. And Draco Tail feels so fucking oppressive. Even after all those hits, I'm like, I thought this deck would be dead. I just lied to myself. I was wrong. I was wrong as hell. And that deck is still extremely oppressive, because even if you don't have like fucking obviously every name under the sun, you still have like a lot of, it's still such a powerful deck. Where like you resolve one polymerization and like you want to shoot yourself.
You don't need to tell me what to feel or argue here. I'm just telling you how I view it, okay? The power level of Genesis is something completely subjective. Where should the power level of Genesis be? Should it be Modern 2, watered down rogue decks of Modern? That's absolutely a valid way to look at it. Should it be somewhere between Edison and Modern, whatever that may be? I gave this remark in my highlight video, a couple months ago, and I said specifically hat format. That was obviously a big mistake because a lot of people jumped on me for that, but you need to understand that from my perspective, I was in the upper level of hat, okay? I was an Infernity duelist, and if anyone knows anything about hat Infernity, that shit's basically a Modern deck, okay? You give full power Infernity, the cards of 2014 today, like it could probably be like Modern decks going first today, genuinely. I mean, dude, Dweller, barrier, break, like, what the fuck? Like, that is a Modern deck. But like, okay, just like I said, I've had time to process and think about it a little bit. It's not so much that I want to play like, set Firehand past, but I think something in the middle would have been nice. Like, hypothetically, if we were to really pick a deck that encapsulates everything about Modern, but not like insane power, I think, no bias here, Sword Soul, I think is a great example. I think Sword Soul is a fantastically well-designed deck that, in my opinion, should be what the height of power in Yu-Gi-Oh should be. A couple of synchros, a back row, and maybe a hand trap, right? But I think there's so much in Genesis, and why there's so much of a resistance for some points issues that they've had in Genesis, which I guess maybe brings us on to the next point, is like, why is Rongo Miniad, like, in the format still? Like, yeah, they nerfed it even more, but it's still technically viable. This is a problem with modern sets that
just
they're trying to push. I praised so much of the communication earlier in this video, but it's very clear they want some decks to be better than other decks because they're newer. So Radiant Typhoon and Onomat were way underpointed. Now that there's a new set, they've hit those decks. Cool Tune is probably a little bit underpointed. Droll and Lockbird took way too long to be addressed. I understand it's teething issues. It was only the second or third point list. I'm hoping they go into a more stricter way of adjusting the points, because ultimately the best way to adjust points is, in my opinion, to be stricter rather than more lenient. But they'd rather undershoot than overshoot when it comes to new decks, because it makes sense. They want you to buy their new product. And I guess, like, for me personally, it's not like a major point. I'm just bringing this up. It's not like the biggest problem or gripe ever. It's just that you can kind of clearly see, like, ultimately at the end of the day, as good as the communication is, as frequent as the ban lists are, there's just this underlying philosophy that is obviously going to be there, and it's just like, buy our new cards. Coupled with like the power level, I think, like, some of the things you can do in Genesis are ridiculous. Like, they're actually crazy. Like, some Genesis decks are pretty much just like tiered meta decks. I mean, I think the second Farfetch Genesis Open tournament was won by just Draco Tail, substituting in some fusion pieces with, I think, like Invoked, Meltdown, insane card by the way, but it was just Draco Tail. Yeah, for me personally, I want a format to be different enough for me to engage with it. If I go play Genesis, it's not that different. It's just not different enough in the same way that drafting is from Modern, as an example, right? So that's essentially my main takeaway. And I guess the final point is there's no digital support. I would probably engage in Genesis if there was a Macedo like ladder for it or something. Absolutely, I think that'd be a great idea. So that's my general thoughts. I hope I've articulated this somewhat decently, despite being somewhat unscripted, off the cuff answer.
But yeah, it's like a very perfect baseline argument for like why he has issues with Genesis. Sometimes some shit is just way too cheap, like Draco Tail. Like even still, Draco Tail is still extremely affordable. Some things like there isn't actually that much player interest. It's very, very upsetting. Like both in terms of like online viewership and whatever. Because again, at the end of the day, all most people want to do is play Yu-Gi-Oh! And what people see in their mind's eye as Yu-Gi-Oh! Is ending up just being normal advanced Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is like, it's completely fine, but it is depressing to see a format that I really, really do resonate with. Just kind of not flop, but not be as poggers as I want it to be. But yeah, that's just my personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think Farf is right or not? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye forever.
Piss. I am attending locals later today, and locals today are Genesis format, which I'm pretty excited about because if it was advanced locals, then to be honest with you, it would have been kind of like mid because it would have been without burst protocol and with the old ban list because the new ban list is just in effect after this upcoming weekend. So it would have kind of like been whatever, you know, if it was advanced constructed. So I'm happy it's Genesis locals today. The only thing that I don't know yet is what I'm gonna play because there's two decks that I could realistically play. The first one is Dragon Rulers. The first one is Dragon Rulers, which has been my favorite deck I've played in Genesis so far, period. And the reason why I kind of thought about bringing it back is because, of course, they've added points to Droll and Lockbird recently, and that card was a huge problem for Dragon Rulers. Other than Droll, it was actually a pretty solid deck. I really liked it. It does a lot of drawing. You know, my favorite version of the deck, the one that I've been playing, has not been the best. You know, I haven't been playing like all the tuner stuff, the crazy combos. You can do a lot of cool stuff with Dragon Rulers. But my favorite one was the one where you draw a bunch of cards. You know, I've been playing like Super Rejuvenation, Sacred Sword of 7 Stars, all of the armed dragons that I can discard for the babies, and then they search and draw. Like that deck's been so fun for me. It's a classic. It is a classic. Josh is addicted to drawing cards thing and sacrifices ceiling for it. It was a very classic Josh approach to a deck, but I've been enjoying it, and I do think that's something that is something I value Genesis for, you know, because other decks generally don't make the craziest endboards in Genesis, if we forget for a second that they allowed Rongo to be 30 points for a while. But like in general, in Genesis format, like the stuff like this, I view it as like the kind of format where you can just basically do what you want, to an extent, of course. But more stuff is viable because the power level is lower than advanced constructed. So Dragon Ruler is a deck that with the points increase on Droll and Lockbird, I wanted to revisit it and play it. And so this morning, when I was looking through my cards to find my Dragon Ruler cards, I came across this pile of cards, which is my Cool Tune core, which I got on release of Phantom Revenge, and I haven't been able to play it a single time yet, simply due to not having the time for it. And then I thought about, like, maybe this is also a good idea because this deck is actually good in Genesis format. In advanced constructed format, of course, this deck is not very viable at the moment, at least if the recent results are anything to go by. It has not seen any success in advanced constructed format, but in Genesis format, apparently, it is actually a pretty strong deck. So I'm kind of like between these two. I'm not sure which one I'm going to play. I want to talk about the builds for both a little bit today and just talk about Genesis in general a little bit because, of course, we also got this update that we looked at on stream yesterday that is, you know, I thought about this more after the stream because I was hanging out on YouTube and I saw some other people like reacting to this and talking about this. And I feel like yesterday when I reacted to it for the first time, I kind of looked at it from an advanced constructed player perspective a little bit too much because I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm a big fan of Genesis format, and from a Genesis format perspective, this is a pretty big announcement, to be honest. Like, of course, for advanced constructed players, what this means is like, oh, Genesis is kind of like competing with advanced constructed formats, so you're going to have to decide between the two because there's going to be YCSs for both at the same time, and they get the same prizes. So advanced constructed players are a little worried that maybe like if they win an effect veiler, that might be worth a little bit less because the Genesis players also get an effect veiler. However, if you kind of like flip this and look at it from the other perspective, it's like, yeah, this is a lot of support for Genesis format. You know, tournaments at YCS level, regionals, new prizes, same prizes as YCS. It's a lot of attention to Genesis format as a whole, which I think as someone who likes Genesis, this is pretty exciting news in hindsight. You know, of course, those things like having to decide between two formats and like there being more effect veilers, I think that's something that's a valid concern, but all things considered, if you're a fan of Genesis format, these are pretty hype news, right? And people have been asking for this for a long time of like another format for Yu-Gi-Oh! That that is officially supported and is getting attention and everything. And Genesis just is that, and so I think that's pretty cool. And at least from my experience personally, for the idea behind Genesis, like I've heard people say like Genesis is not different enough from Advanced Constructed, which might be true for like the short period of time where Rongo FTKs were running wild, but I think right now and also in general, that's not been my experience. Right? I got Rongo locked in one of the rounds at YCS Bologna Genesis. But all things considered, like all of the times I've spent playing Genesis format, the power level is so much lower than Advanced Constructed. Come on, like it's a different environment. It is not modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Light, in my opinion. It is very, very different in terms of what kind of cards are legal and everything. That's how I feel, at least at the moment, and we're gonna see how that goes, because I'm bringing my my GoPro to locals today. We're gonna film the rounds with Genesis, and we're gonna take a look at it on stream tomorrow, and we're gonna see how it goes, and also we're gonna find out if after the last points update, where they did hit Onomath a lot, which I was really happy about, we're gonna see what the environment looks like. I mean, a very simple example is that I'm finding a lot of success with Medolce of all things. Look, here's the thing, right? I've gone, since they've introduced Genesis, okay? I've won locals with Genesis locals with Radiant Typhoon, which, to be fair, was a really strong deck at the time in Genesis format, but was not viable at all in Advanced Constructed, okay? Like, it was a meta deck in Genesis, but not in Advanced Constructed. It will be in Advanced Constructed with the new support, but not at the time. I've won locals with Necros, which is unplayable in Advanced Constructed format, completely unplayable. I've won a what's it called? I've won a side event at YCS Lille with Dragon Rulers, which is also completely and utterly unplayable in Advanced Constructed format. Cool Tune is regarded as one of, if not the best decks in Genesis right now, when it's also completely and utterly unplayable in Advanced Constructed format. We're not talking rogue decks, okay? We're not talking rogue decks that are viable in Genesis. We're talking decks that you literally go 0-4 at Advanced Constructed locals with basically every time. Like, these decks are not playable, okay? And in Genesis, they actually win tournaments, which I think that showcases really well that the power level gap is quite large. And I think it's not fair to say that Genesis is just basically watered down modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it is an entirely different format. As someone who's played Advanced Constructed very actively for years, and who I've also been very active in Genesis format, they are completely different things. If it wasn't for the time rules, would Paleo be okay in Genesis? Absolutely. If it wasn't for the time, I could probably cook up a really nasty Paleo deck if it wasn't for the time rules in Genesis format. But like, you can definitely grind with these decks. You can set 5 going second into most of these decks. Like, it would work. I would get double losses at current time rules all the time, but it could work. I'm still excited about Genesis. I'm still optimistic about Genesis format as a whole. These news are exciting for Genesis format. I just wanted to put that out there because I feel like when I looked at it yesterday, I was putting a little bit too much emphasis on like, okay, Genesis is competing with Advanced Constructed format, which might be a positive for some people, but also a negative. But all things considered, I am happy that we're getting more attention, more prizing towards Genesis format. And I think if this is what keeps happening, then this format might have a pretty cool future. All right. That being said, now we are taking a look at Dragon Ruler and Cool Tune, which are the 2 decks I'm considering for today's locals. I'm gonna be honest with you. Once I've taken a look into Cool Tune, if this deck seems cool, then I keep saying cool. Cool is a word I use a lot, but it feels weird whenever I'm using it in whenever we're talking about Cool Tune. I would like to play this deck today, if I can make it work, if I can figure out how it works, and if we can build it, if I have all the cards, which I should have all the cards I need to play Cool Tune. I would love to play Dragon Rulers, but I think it makes more sense if I try Cool Tune. One reason, well, I'm not gonna lie, I'll show you one of the reasons why I wanted to play Dragon Rulers today, which is this. I got this recently alongside the sleeves from YCS Japan. Which this is sponsored. These are from Young Cards. You can get these as well if you want to, but that's besides the point. I'm not being paid for this specific segment or anything like that. I was genuinely excited to show off my Dragon Ruler mat and sleeves with the Dragon Ruler deck in Genesis format. But then I found the Cool Tune cards in my piles of cards when I was looking for the Dragon Rulers, and I was like, you know what? I would really like to play this. But I think the Cool Tune makes more sense for now. Because I've even already made a YouTube video on Dragon Rulers in Genesis format, because I've already played it at a YCS Lil public event. So eventually we're gonna bring the Dragon Ruler deck back. And it might be today if I'm not liking how the Cool Tune deck looks, but I kind of want to try Cool Tune. But yeah, this playmat from YCS Japan, I'm not sure if they still have any in stock, because it was actually quite cheap for what it is. I think it's like about 30 something bucks, which is kind of crazy for considering it's a YCS Japan exclusive. And you can get 10% if you use Josh 10 at Young Cards. So feel free to check it out. Also, the sleeves are insane as well. I really want to play these at some point, but yeah. If I play Dragon Rulers, it'd be on that playmat, but yeah. Maybe play Ruler now and wait with Cool Tune until they get their Omni and Burst Protocol. Oh, you mean Zalen? You know what? That's the thing, right? We're gonna take a look at both. We're gonna take a look at both decks today, in theory, and then I'll just decide later. All right. So for Dragon Rulers, this is the one we're gonna start with because I think it's gonna be a little bit quicker. There is two ways to play Dragon Rulers in Genesis format. One of them is the better way, and the other one is my favorite way. And I'm going to go with my favorite way probably, but we're going to talk about the other way a little bit as well. So, fundamentally, I do believe we have to go with the Dragon Ruler ratios that I've been playing all the time. So, if you didn't know, because it's also not very intuitive and doesn't make that much sense, but all of the Dragon Rulers have 7 points in Genesis format, the big ones. So that goes for Blaster, Tempest, Tidal, and Redox. So if you were to play all 12, which this is not all 12, where's the others? There's the Tidal and there is a Redox somewhere in here. Which I guess the 7 points is kind of intuitive, right? Because they're level 7s. Get it? Get it? If you play all, you can't play all 12 Dragon Rulers together. Because that would be, quick math, 84 points, right? 12 times 7 is 84. So they do fit all in one deck. You can play all 12 Dragon Rulers for 84 points. The baby rulers are 0, so you can play as many baby rulers as you want. And the new Dragon Rulers, Spectral, Nebulous, as well as the Exceed monsters are all 0 points. So Chasma, Disaster, and Eclipse, they're all 0. So you can play as many babies and as many Exceeds as you want. However, the main deck big Dragon Rulers are all 7 points. Which means if you want to play all of them, you have very little room for any sort of like pointed non-engine. As a result, what I have been doing in previous tournaments is I've played 3 copies of the really important ones, which are Blaster and Tempest, and I've cut on 1 Tidal and 1 Redox. I've played 10 big Dragon Rulers. That's been my ratio for whenever I've played this deck, and I felt like that was fine, because that is a flat 70 points for the Dragon Rulers. Because that lets you play 1 card in particular that I really, really like in this deck, which is Zeus. Because Zeus is 20 points. If you play all 12 Dragon Rulers, you cannot play Zeus. Where's my Zeus? I have a Zeus somewhere. I looked for it this morning. So I have it here. Oh yeah, there's Zeus. What's the end board for Dragon Rulers? Okay, that's where that's where the version of the deck comes in, because dragon rulers are actually quite synergistic with a lot of different things that you can play in it. The most common version from what I've seen online is the rose dragons, right? People are playing the rose dragons because they are level 3 dragon tuners, and you can actually search red rose dragon in this deck, which is relatively easy via Chasma. So the way Chasma works, in case you're not familiar with the new Dragon Ruler support, because it's not been meta in the advanced constructed format at all, Chasma needs 2 level 7 dragons and has a quick effect where you can detach 1 material to send a Dragon Ruler from your deck to the graveyard as cost, one of the big level 7s, and apply its effect that it has when it's discarded. So what you can do is you can send Tempest for cost, and then apply its discard effect, which is add a dragon monster from your deck to your hand. So you can search any dragon with Chasma, basically. So the idea is you summon Chasma on turn 1. Usually you send Redox, Tidal, or Tempest to get their discard effects, which is Reborn, Foolish, or Search. And then you leave the Chasma on the field, and on the opponent's turn, you send Blaster for a pop. Which is what I've been doing. What you can also do a whole bunch of cringe stuff with this card, in which is
I
what
forgot
they've
to
been doing. If the deck
get a
they
guard.
had, like, one regional in advanced constructed format where people did like summon Chasma, use the effect on your turn to send Tidal effect to send Christia, and then on the opponent's turn, Chasma send Redox to reborn the Christia. We're not gonna do any of that in Genesis format, and that's also because Christia is, I'm pretty sure it's 100 points in Genesis, so you couldn't even do that, which is good. But yeah. One alternative thing that you can do if you want to turn the deck